welcome back once again to Red Hot Talk episode 49 with Rod and myself, Jimmy. First of all, I must apologize that we have had to cancel last week's show and because of engagements that we both had independently. And so we're back this week and we are going to have some fun talking a little bit about OM System / Olympus as a company, the past, present, and perhaps maybe a little bit of the future as well. Before we continue, just want to ask how is Rod doing? And because we've missed you for a week. give an update to everybody.
You didn't even notice. No, I'm doing fine, thank you. I've had quite a lot of stuff to get through, quite a bit of chaos with appointments, commitments, work, this thing and that. But at the moment, I'm on an even keel, so we're okay for now.
Okay, awesome. And I'm pretty drugged up at the moment, so like I may be a little bit slow in reacting, and because I'm still recovering from my very, very bad throat infection last weekend that kind of put me in hospital for 2 days. Wasn't fun at all. I couldn't really eat, couldn't really drink, anything like that. So I was on drips for 2 days. And so that was not fun. But I'm recovering. But just that these medication that I'm taking at the moment is kind of affecting my stomach a little bit. So it's just not having that nice feeling as I speak at the moment. So let's try to use our conversation today to distract me a little bit, to get me out of this misery, and we can spend some time fun, maybe have some fun talking a little bit about the OM System brand and also the Olympus as well. So maybe let's start off with talking a little bit about the past first. You know, how Olympus came about with the 4/3 and / micro 4/3 format, and how it became, to me at least in my eyes, it become quite a popular format for many enthusiasts and some professionals alike. And obviously, one of the biggest advantage of 4/3 format is size. And it was at a time, when it first came out, it was definitely one of the smallest interchangeable camera system that you can get, right, Rod?
Yeah, I'd say so. I can't think of a direct equivalent. I think that all came about with the mirrorless, so micro 4/3 rather than 4/3 itself. But even the 4/3 SLRs were pretty small. They were quite impressive. So I used the E400, if I got that right. I had the E410 for a while. 620, very nice little camera. Never used the E1, but they're all characterized by being quite small cameras. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're all
even for SLRs.
Yeah, and I guess that they just as traditional Olympus fashion, they're all very well built, because from those cameras that I handle, they're all very rugged and very, very well built.
Even the non-professional ones like the 620 and the 400, 410, even though they were kind of plastic bodied, the controls I felt were of a different standard to everything else around them at the time. Had a kind of precision and a weight and a solidity to them, which was unusual in cameras at the time. Yeah. So yeah.
So that's quite interesting, because I think to a lot of people who are new to the scene of the digital photography world, may or may not have heard of the 4/3 format, because people may jump, because micro 4/3 has been around for a while now, so people may just familiarize themselves in micro 4/3, but not knowing about 4/3. So what, just a brief introduction, maybe a brief history about, what caused Olympus to abandon the 4/3 format and kind of moved into the micro 4/3.
I can't answer that question. I thought you might be able to answer that question. I think I can only imagine DSLRs were still very popular at the time. I can only imagine that Olympus saw an opportunity to produce a mirrorless camera that would be smaller and mechanically simpler. And that was at the time before anybody else had really figured this out. I mean, I guess Samsung did at the same time.
Yep.
And Panasonic, not Samsung. Yeah, Samsung with the APS-C NX cameras, but
They
but
did, yeah.
Panasonic as well. So I think Olympus perhaps decided to get in early. Perhaps it's proving a little too difficult to make proper inroads with the DSLR in a market dominated by Canon and Nikon, and thought instead, well, look, be where the enemy isn't. Make something new. Make something
Yep.
different. I think we probably ought to acknowledge as well that some of the earliest attempts were a bit strange,
Yep.
like the E300, E330, if I got that right. I have to think back a long way here. They were quite strange, but
Yep.
they had a mirror as well. They were all a bit odd, but yeah, I think probably the switch to mirrorless was good timing and quite a crafty move, really.
Yeah, I think it was quite a brave move as well.
Quite well
And
timed. It was brave, yeah.
it was, and I think another reason is that's personal. This is only my personal opinion about the full third transition was because, like you said, it was dominating by basically Nikon and Canon. There's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
no one
yeah.
else in the market, and
No.
and Olympus trying to carve out a market from this big massive pie there by producing very stunning lenses. I'm telling you, some of the lenses were really good, but to combat certain, I would say, impressions from photographers when it comes to photographic aesthetics, when it comes to depth of field, for instance, they had to produce some really fast primes and fast zoom lenses. And but they made the first f2 zoom lens, the 35 to 100 f2, which is kind of like unheard of because all the zoom lenses were 2.8 at the time, all the pro range, and so f2 was significantly
Which
faster.
one's that, Jimmy? Can you remind me?
That's the Olympus Zuiko 35 to 100 f2, and so that was the f2 constant aperture zoom range and zoom lens.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to F2 zooms.
Yeah, yeah.
That was on my
and
list. Yeah,
and also they have a prime which is 150 f2, which is also a very
yeah,
bright prime. Obviously, with the 2 times crop factor, you are looking at a 300 equivalent, and then 70
yeah.
to 200. So they have a lot of really stunning glass back in the full third era. And however, that's the however bit. The thing is, they are as good as they are, but they are very big because of f2 aperture. And it just didn't feel quite right, despite having such a small and rugged body, and the lenses were, I suppose, it's a little bit too big for the body. um,
You could say that. I think perhaps out of fairness as well, we ought to say that in the early days, the four thirds and micro four thirds centers were at something of a disadvantage. Not specifically in terms of resolution, because the 12 megapixel resolution sensor at the time, that was as much as many Nikon DSLRs, for example. That wasn't the issue, but the it did have a bit of an issue, as I recall, with shadow noise. So I think the big step up in quality came with the 16 megapixel sensor, and then later on the 20 megapixel sensor. But I think in the early days of micro four thirds, it was trying to combat a bit of a deficiency in image quality.
yeah,
Not specifically in resolution, but perhaps in overall image quality and dynamic range, with somewhat limited shadow performance, I think. Wasn't always a major factor, but it's easy to forget that the MFT sensor technology has come on a very long way. And
yes.
I think a lot of Micro Four Thirds critics are probably thinking back to the early days when their remarks about relative image quality might have been true.
Yeah.
I don't think you can make those same general remarks today.
No, no. I mean, especially from what I would call it, the normal operating range, which is between
Yeah, yeah.
the base ISO up to 6400. I mean, that's what I would call the normal operating range. When people starting to talking about some high figures like 12,800, 25,600. There will be some use case for those ISO values, but however, you're not going to shoot it every single day, 24 hours a day. It's not something that you use constantly. But majority of the time, you're going to shoot in bright daylight. As a photographer, you know where to look for light, so you're not going to use extreme high ISO in most situations unless it's emergency anyway. So if you're looking at the general kind of operating range, and like you said, and I don't think people have given enough notice or credit to a lot of the Micro Four Thirds developments, because I think some of them are just as good, especially between 100 to even 1600 ISO range, and I think they are very comparable. The fact I can say that confidently is because I do use, as you know now, I do use Micro Four Thirds, APS-C, and full frame, and so from what I can tell, yes, there are still some very technical differences there if you really push this, the files to the limit, but only when you need to push the files to the limit, like when you're really dragging up the shadow or trying to pull the highlight. In extreme situations, then you see the differences there. But in most cases, I don't think you really notice anything.
I think as well, you have to be careful not to generalize about sensor sizes as if that's the only determining factor, because sensors do vary in their performance, even sensors of the same size. So I shoot with Canon gear, full frame Canon gear, and I've previously used an EOS RP, 26 megapixels full frame, and I now use an EOS R8, which is 24 megapixels full frame. The interesting thing about those cameras is that the sensors are not good with very deep shadow detail. So you can quite justifiably say that if you try to drag too much shadow detail out of an MFT image, it'll get noisier. Yeah. Well, if you do the same with my full frame Canons, it won't just get noisier. The detail rendering will just fold completely into a kind of mush. So don't assume that sensor size is an absolute and final indicator of image quality, because how the sensors are designed and operated within the camera is a critical factor, really. So sensor size is part of the equation. It's not the whole of the equation.
Yep. So yeah, that's definitely true. So for those who are not too familiar with digital photography, Rod's word is definitely very wise there, and I mean, I wouldn't disagree more. It's just really true. You really have to work with the file a lot to see the differences and to see how each sensor really performs. This is something actually. I often see not a lot of technical review mention this sort of thing. They just measure the values. They look at the lab tests and look at the dynamic range. Test it in a very controlled environment. But how often do we shoot in a controlled environment? We don't. We shoot outside. We shoot in a world where the light constantly changing, and it's something that you need to be aware, what's the real life performances are, and to be quite honest, I don't think that any camera you buy today is bad, and we had that conversation many times.
But there aren't any perfect ones either, and simply getting a bigger sensor doesn't necessarily solve everything. So I don't know. I think my broad point about all of this is that in the old days, you might have been able to make some comparison based on sensor size. But these days, it's my feeling that it's no longer that simple. It's how effective the camera processor is, how the analog to digital conversion works. So a bigger sensor will generally be better than a smaller one, but you can't necessarily count on it. Other things can play their part.
Yep. And ultimately, you're still the photographer. You decide how the light goes, and you decide, how you would like to achieve the exposures, whether you want to underexpose, overexpose, whatever, things like that. And if you really want the ultimate dynamic range, you still can't beat, stacking images, if you really want to go into that kind of thing. And
I think that's what you should do. You should bracket and then merge. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
And I think your earlier point about most photography will be within a more normal envelope of brightness levels and exposure and what have you. And I think if you were to say to a professional photographer, what's your camera like at 12,800 or 25,600, unless they shoot a lot of wildlife stuff at dusk, they're going to say, how the heck did you get into a situation where you need those ISOs? You should have done it some other time. You should have used some lights. You should have done this. You should have done that. I don't think most professional photographers will want to be very close to those performance limits.
No.
They'll try and find another way.
Like any professional or even enthusiast, you want to have the best quality file as possible by using as low ISO as possible, right?
Yeah, I think
And
so.
I mean, that's the kind of general rule of thumb anyway. Not necessarily that's true, because you may still have to push the ISO up to maintain certain shutter speed, for instance, to freeze actions. But other than that, it's purely academic, really, and it's ultimately still going to be the photographer's decision to make sure that you achieve the best that you can with whatever setting you have. So let's move on from the 4/3 now. Let's into the Michael 4/3 era, and when Olympus really, to me, I know at the time is Panasonic brought to the very first Michael 4/3 camera, which is a G1. Then Olympus followed suit with the E1, and so those were kind of like the two Michael 4/3 camera came out, and to me, I would always say that Olympus all the way, simply because at that time, I think they play, not only they were the first in the Michael 4/3 or the mirrorless, to be honest, the mirrorless kind of world, but they also played very well in terms of styling and for the cameras. And the E1 was obviously the first pen, and then it just looks absolutely gorgeous. It mimics the original film camera, and they have a bunch of little,
is that the
yeah.
EP one?
The EP one, sorry, not the E1, the EP one.
Yeah.
So it also had a bunch of small lenses to go with it, and this is something we talked about, right? Like when you bring a body, you can't bring a small body without small lenses. And then now the EP one came out with a bunch of small lenses. Good or bad, that's another story. I know the 17-2.8 was really terrible lens, but then it was small.
I didn't know it's that bad. I had one for a while. I thought it was all right.
And but it was a small lens, so it goes well with the body, and then just looks fantastic. The G1 on the other hand they played it safe. They played it more like a traditional SLR shaped body with a grip, with a little kind of mirror housing on the top, with the EVF inside. And it looked very conventional, but Olympus just gone backward. Okay, let's give it a little bit of a retro vibe to it. And they played it well, and they played it successfully through the following 5-10 years, and they've been doing really well with all these kind of retro throwback, and they continue to bring out small primes time and time again. They gave us the best possible small prime lenses from the Olympus range, the 17 1.8, the 25 1.8, and in 45 1.8. These three lenses are kind of like the de facto for anyone who really want a small system to go with a small camera. You just really can't beat that. I think that was kind of, for me anyways, kind of like the heydays of of Olympus in the Michael 4/3 world. I mean, obviously, as the range expands, as the models expands, you're gonna start seeing more models coming out, more higher end models, which then to bring out the OMD lines, starting to have a little bit more features, because the body can be a little bit bigger now, and then they throw in a little bit more features like the 5-axis stabilizations, and then they have all sorts of stuff, dual card slot. And they're trying to build the EM1, which is the pro body, the shape. And once again, go back to the more traditional SLR shape body, have the EVF on top. Things are going kind of more aiming towards a shooter more than a let's say a more amateur style, a street style kind of photographers. These, I think, to me, they done it really well in the at first, and they're starting to bring out a lot of pro lenses to go with the EM1 series, the OMD line, like the 12-42A, 40-152A, all the other pro lenses starting to pop up everywhere. The 1.2 Pros, Pro Prime lenses, they're all starting to filter through as a system. And the course of like last 15 years, I think they've done really well maturing the system. To you, what do you think? What could have done, the Olympus could have done more, and because I think they do you think they may have kind of split the line a little bit too fine, like
I think that is certainly what happened. While you were talking, I was trying to think of the exact year this happened, but basically Olympus kind of spun off the OMDs, I think, from the original pens, but then very quickly thought, well, we got two camera ranges here. And I think quite quickly you had two equally important parts of the range. You had the pens and the OMDs. I just have a feeling that whenever any company starts to worry, it goes for the conventional. And I think Olympus probably thought, do you know what, we'll play it safe. We'll do the same cameras as everybody else. I don't know if anyone by saying the OMDs are that, but I just think this is what can happen. And I think the more interesting cameras can suffer as a result. I think there was definitely a definite split in the range. I mean, my feeling is that if you've got a small camera, you need small lenses, and that's the pen. If you've got to use big lenses, then you want a big camera, and that's for me OMD. So I think there's logic in both, but I do feel aggrieved that OM System has decided to choose one over the other. So I mean, I was at a show just last week, like a small dealer show where there was an Olympus stand, and I certainly don't want to get anyone at OMD Systems into trouble or anything, because they were simply reflecting the company's current strategy. So I went to look at the stand, and it was all bigger lenses, birding lenses, OMDs. I think there were a couple of OM5s, but it's all OM1s principally. But they did have one of the redesigned 9 to 18s. So that's interesting. I picked it up and had a look. It's an amazing lens. And the chap said, oh yeah, sometimes when I'm photographing birds, you get one coming up really close, you need quite a wide lens. But I then explained, it's interesting to me because I've just acquired a Pen F. And he was like, oh, really? And I was disappointed. I mean, he wasn't being scathing, but I just felt completely excluded as that type of user, as if I was, part of history now. This is OM System now. The pen, everything I use about it, or I like about this system, gone. So I've never had that experience from any other camera brands where I felt that I was no longer part of the user base, basically. So that was disappointing. It's not. I'm not blaming anyone at OM System for that. It's a strategic decision. That's fine. It's their choice. But for me, it's disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say any more than that is their core strategy at the moment, and and obviously many of the listener knows my status quo and also my current affair with the OM System. So I'm going to be reflecting my opinion as a fanboy here, and I'm not gonna use my official capacity to discuss anything currently what's happening here, or maybe in the future as well. But something that I would like to say about my feeling towards Olympus, I'm not talking about OM System yet. I'm just gonna go through my feelings towards Olympus. I do find their gear were very well suited for my needs as a professional portrait and location photographer, because one of the main reasons I switched over from full frame cameras is because of the size, and that is very much the reason. But as a professional photographer, size is only one thing, but it has to have quality lenses for me to use them to maximize anything that I could capture. And luckily, the time when I switched over, which back in 2016, so they had the E1 Mark II, and then they have a bunch of pro lenses already. So when I test driven all these lenses, and I just found them to be brilliant. All these lenses were fully capable of delivering results that I need for my professional clients. And then I gave it a go. I test the system for about 3 months, and I decided to switch after that. So that was really kind of my reason for it. And I think that the system was great. The company at the time, Olympus, and the team in the UK were very fantastic. They communicated with me very well. So they included me. It's kind of what you echoing kind of a little bit what you said there. And even though at the time is Olympus were more the focus is in everywhere. It's almost like any camera brands. They were into wildlife, but they're also into macro. They're into street photography. They're into weddings. They're into many things. So even though I was a portrait photographer, but they also have resources and attention to give it to me, and so I would be able to talk to anyone regarding perhaps some of my problems. or maybe perhaps some of my concerns, and they will be able to answer me with details and things like that. So that if I have any uh, uh, about settings of the cameras, and then they will say, oh, you can do this and that to maximize whatever. So it's quite good to have that feeling when you are being included. And so that was I think the driving force for me to move into the Olympus cam, and then just thinking about just trying a camera and just buy it. So because changing system for a professional is often a very daunting thing, and also very difficult decision. Having a guy having used the Canon for a best part of 15 years, I know the system inside out. I know the lenses, I know the lens choices, I know the characters of the lenses, I know when to do certain things, and so it's also very, very difficult, really. I mean, it's just difficult to change from one brand to another. So I'm glad that I did make the choice to move over to Olympus in 2016. I never really looked back afterward, and so that was pretty amazing. I can see Rod kind of popped out. I think it's probably connection issues there.
Yeah. I live out in the wild, so my internet connection is variable. I'm
It's
back.
strange. It's strange. No, I can't see you
Oh,
though.
I'm not
That's
back.
you're not back. I can hear you. I think everybody can hear you too. All right. We're just going to wait until he pops back. So, anyone who has any sort of experience and comments about, why did you switch to Olympus, or when did you switch to Olympus? Can you leave some comments here? So I want to see how you guys got into Olympus in the first place, and that will be quite interesting as well. And what you think about Micro Four Third, if you have already used other system and formats in the past, because that will quite beneficial for other users and other photographers may be considering Micro Four Third as a platform, and we can talk a little bit about that as well. So while we're waiting for Rod to come back, and hopefully he does.
I am back. Am I not back? Can you hear me, Jimmy?
We can all hear you.
But I can't see my face on the screen. That's not a bad thing. I'm just saying. I don't know whether I don't know. Can you see me?
No, it's blank at the moment for some reason.
Oh, shall I try again?
You can try again. Yes.
I'll try again. Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back to have some of this comment that I can see quite a few comments already. And Andrew Banner and say that they're good.
I'm back.
Yeah, you're back.
For now.
Hopefully you can say that. So Andrew say that good to see me up and well. Yes, and thank you very much for all the comments I received over the last few days, really. And I'm quite overwhelmed by all the get well soon messages, because I posted a photo of me in hospital, and it wasn't very pleasant. So I'm getting better, but the heavy doses of antibiotics is really causing me stomach issues at the moment. So I hope that I will feel a little bit better. But I need to stay the course. So I still got about 7 days to endure, and so I just need to go through all the medicines, and hopefully that will be the end of it. So let's continue our conversations about Micro Four Olympus, more specific at the moment. So you talked about the two lines there earlier, the pen and the OMD, and obviously. We kind of talked about it in the last couple of chat shows before, how the market has shaping how company reacts to consumers' demand, and also by in terms of the product design wise. So they're now bringing more and more premium, high-end cameras than consumer/low-end cameras because of the profit margins. Do you think this is part of the reasons why they focus on OMD lines than the pen? Because pen is more like a consumer level cameras, and the competition is more fierce in that space. I'm not entirely sure. And what would be your take on it?
I don't trust this distinction between big cameras being professional and small cameras not being professional. I don't trust that at all. To my way of thinking, a professional camera is one that helps you make your living. And if you're a travel photographer and find that an Olympus pen is the only camera that does the job you need it to do, that makes it a professional camera. So I do not trust at all this notion that some cameras are for professionals, some are for enthusiasts. I really don't like that at all, because I think the whole professional market is different. It's not what it was. If you can be a professional photographer with just one camera and one lens, it's
Yep.
the what a professional photographer is has changed and
Yeah.
evolved. So
Yep.
I do dislike this notion that only a professional camera has to be big and expensive, and if a camera isn't big and expensive, it's not a professional camera.
No,
So
but it's funny you mentioned that, because I do agree with what you just said about the word professional, in the camera world anyway, as products, and because if you look at the general consumers these days, I'm not saying everybody's listening right now, but in general terms, many people are buying professional cameras, whether they're professionals or not. So the word professional doesn't really mean anything anymore. It's just a price range to me.
it's kind of it's a kind of level of sophistication and features
Yep.
often associated with professional photography. But I think that definition is starting to just get so loose. I'm not quite sure how useful it is. Um, I'm sure there are many people making a very good living as YouTubers or filmmakers using what might be considered consumer cameras.
Oh yeah, I mean,
But
if you look at
it's
one of the biggest bloggers on YouTube, Casey Neistat, and in his early days, when he's already like a very very popular and successful, making a lot of money from YouTube by vlogging, all he used was a Canon 400D with
yeah.
with a
Oh
basic
my
kit zoom
God.
lens,
I just
and that
I just sold one of those for about £40.
so
What a
but
dreadful
that
camera.
but that but that was what they used, and so
Yeah,
like
yeah.
in that case, but like we always say, like in the right hands, any cameras can become can become a tool,
We
can become a very useful tool.
we mustn't confuse equipment with talent.
No.
If you've got talent, better equipment may help you get more from your talent. But if you've got talent, that's what counts,
Yep.
in my opinion. That's why
Well,
I had
no.
to buy equipment. I haven't got any talent.
But yeah, that's certainly a very good tips for everybody who's been considering buying cameras, because I think a lot of the time, we also talked about buying invested in lenses more than camera. That was a general rule of thumb for everybody, because until you really learn your skills and hone your skill and know everything about the cameras inside out in terms of features wise, it's no point really getting the latest and the best, because especially in digital terms these days, and for technologies, it can easily go out of date within a year or two.
Yeah.
Although having said that, in the last 5-6 years, the leap in technology has kind of somehow plateaued. Is not moving as quickly or as fast as it used to be. These days, I don't think you get any bad cameras to start with, and that you can easily achieve brilliant results with some cheap cameras. And you don't need to spend 4,000, 5,000 on the camera. You can get really really good results for even £500-600.
And that's the other thing, isn't it? We associate the cost of a camera with how professional it is.
Yep.
And that's another mistake, because a camera that does stuff you don't use is
Yep.
kind of a waste. And I think that a lot of the cameras we're currently being encouraged to think of as professional have burst rates, have video codecs, have AF subject recognition and tracking features that very often we don't ourselves actually need.
Yep.
So it's very easy to slip into this idea that you must have the very latest and the best of everything
Yep.
if you want to be a professional, whereas the actual world of professional content creation is very diverse. You don't need everything. You just need the features for your particular genre or niche. And
Yes.
just you can't just throw money at the problem and think you'll solve it. You have to get
Yeah.
the right product for what you do.
Absolutely.
How did we get onto this? How did we
I
get
have
onto
no idea.
this?
I have no idea. But then again, it's good that you mentioned about content creation, because this is my next point about, we still talk about Olympus time, not OM System yet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so like during the time when everything was kind of like glowing and growing and everything in the Micro Four Thirds world. Panasonic, all the GX lines was really popular with the filmmakers, indie filmmakers and things like that. They were really like, exploding in that space. And so, oh no, we try kind of sidetracking a little bit here, but Panasonic was always kind of like the video arm in the Micro Four Thirds alliance, and Olympus is always the photography arm in the Micro Four Thirds alliance. So they have a very distinct customer base, and but things got a little bit blurred as we know that market has shifted, market has evolved very rapidly over the last few years, and especially with the younger generation of digital photographer / hybrid photographer / filmmakers, whatever you want to call these people, content creators, and they need feature for both. And that's the time when Panasonic starting to thinking about, okay, we need something that can be hybrid. So they have the G9, and then they have some of the little cameras coming out that can do pretty well in both. And OM System, as much as they introduced the video features in a lot of the cameras, but none of them were really considered to be as serious in the video world as Panasonic did with the photography side.
This does puzzle me a bit, because what sticks in my mind particularly is an Olympus launch I went to a few years ago, not long before they swapped to OM System. I think it might have been for the EPL9. It was a launch in London. We went to some fancy bar on top of a building where they had a kind of, you might even have been there, Jimmy, for all I know, I can't remember, where they had
it's the denim one.
Yeah. So they had these pretend ski lift cabins.
Yep.
And they had bottles of champagne on ice in these. And we thought, right, we're okay here. But it turns out that wasn't for us. We were just getting like a sandwich and a can of Coke, and we had to go off then. The champagne on ice was for the influencers, the influencer party that was coming after we'd left the building. So that made me think back then that, oh, I hate these guys. No, it didn't make me think that, but it made me realize that looking back on it now, I think Olympus had the right idea 2 or 3 years too early. And then when it didn't stick, they gave up. If they were to do that now, I think the world would be their oyster. Because if you look at the success of the X100-6,
yeah,
the success of that camera is not really down to its specifications. It's the look and the kind of traction it's got on social media. I might be completely deluded, but if the pens were still around today, I think they would have had a slice of that and would have done very well out of that. And I think Olympus was going for the influencer market before it was quite ready and gave up too soon. So that's just what I think. But then I'm not employed as a business strategist, probably for a very good reason. But that's just how it seems to me.
Well, I mean, and obviously you have to look at the changes in the social media scenes in the last few years, and that really has changed and evolved, and
the look,
yeah,
and the traction, and the kind of viral vibe of certain things is everything. It is everything now, and I think Olympus was just a little too early to capitalize.
Yeah, I mean, Olympus had a lot of really brilliant ideas that came a little bit too soon, and then
I think so.
In my opinion, there were a few products that were really brilliant. If we have it now,
can you imagine the X100-6 in denim?
Oh,
how wonderful would that be? We had it and we threw it away when we had the EPL9. Or was it the EPL8? I can't remember.
It was the 9. It was the 9 had the denim.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, and but yeah, I think it's quite interesting to look back and whether we want to learn from it or not, is this another thing. But it's certainly very interesting to look at things retrospectively, how market was and now, and compared to the product that they then had, compared to what might have been happening if they continue the line or have an updated version of whatever they had before for now.
Yeah,
and that will be a very, very different story.
I think there's something else that quite aggravates me as well about that particular time was, correct me if I'm wrong, Jimmy, the EPR9 could shoot 4K 30p.
It can, yes.
It's enough. It's enough for the audience. Now, there's a whole YouTube industry built around telling you how it's not, how you need 60p, how you need oversampling, how you need 10-bit, how you need vlog. There's a whole, you cannot move for people who tell you these things are essential, but they're not. They're not. For the kind of hip and trendy influence audience these cameras were made for, the standard 4K 30p, in my opinion, fine.
I mean, if you look at the target market for these sort of street style influencers, the majority of them, there are a few reasons they buy these sort of cameras. First of all, it's as a fashion accessory. They carry around their body. They take a few shots with their smartphone, post on social media with the camera on. He's not actually using them at all in any sort of capacity. But when they do use them, they usually just take some samples, very simple stills, a clip here and there. And they not necessarily produce even a vlog. You know, they're not even using them for a full video capacity. So just recording clips. So that's the reason why you can see the X106 isn't really a video beast in any means. You look at the specs of it, you know, as it has certain stabilization features, whatnot, but it's not really a dedicated or having a very sophisticated video feature set that will make it a hybrid camera, so to speak. It's still very much a still photographer's tool. However, you know, like many would know that only a handful of them are being sold to probably proper photographers, and majority of them are still more or less using them as a fashion accessories, and because it's catching a lot of attentions. It's like, I'm carrying an X106 because it's fashionable. You know, I'm in trend. This is a very important statement, especially.
Oh, he's so bitter, Jimmy. So bitter.
But it is true. It is true. You know, this is unfortunately the side effect of social media. In anything in trend, if you got something trendy that you're using or carrying, or it just generate attentions, and that is somehow the negative effects of it. If you know, everyone remember like when the Apple Watch first came out, everyone wanted an Apple Watch, and then they think that if you don't have an Apple Watch, you're not on social media. If you're a YouTuber, you have to wear Apple Watch. It's kind of the same vibe going on there. You know, if you're on YouTube, you have to have a certain type of camera, you have a certain type of accessories, you have a certain type of brand that kind of like carrying, you know, otherwise you're not part of the group, so to speak. So unfortunately, that's the fact.
So I think what I guess what we're getting at is the history of Olympus, where they've been and where they're going to and what happened. That for me was a pivotal point when they gave up on the pen. Yeah, I think that's just throwing away an audience that was still just ripening.
Yeah,
I'm sure they weren't selling enough, and they had very good reasons for ditching it that I don't know about, and they might have been right. But to me, as an outsider,
well,
they ditched the very thing.
Nothing is promised, but obviously the pen line's not completely dead. It's still live in the website, and it's still one of the highest selling cameras in Japan. So like domestically, it's still going live and well over there.
I've got a suggestion. If OM System doesn't much like the pen, sell it. Yeah. Sell it to somebody else. Lock, stock, and barrel. Or I don't know, find a licensee to take it on, because otherwise we will lose a kind of sub-brand that we all seem to love.
Well, it's a brand also has a value, but also as a brand that has a value, but because it's a value, I'm very doubtful that they're going to sell it at this moment in time.
But where's the value to OM System? There might be some notional capital value, but there's no revenue value if you don't make any cameras.
Well, that's something that we can discuss in a future bit in a minute. And then,
okay.
Yeah. So now let's talk. Let's swing on to talk a little bit about a very different notion here now, and it's going to be quite heated. And guys, and if you're listening, brace for it, because I have a lot of questions from all of you, and in some of my previous videos, so I'm going to group them all together into one single point. Is that, and should Olympus have full frame? Because yes, it is a big thing. And and I remember when Panasonic first jumped into the full frame bandwagon by launching the first ever full frame cameras. And everyone thought, first of all, there were two reactions there. First of all, it was Panasonic abandoning Micro Four Third, moving into full frame, and that's it. But as a matter of fact, they didn't. You can see that they just launched the GX7, trying to renew the interest in the Micro Four Third. Well, in fact, quite successfully, because the GX7 is pretty good. And Olympus at the time, was sticking the gun with the Micro Four Third, and many people were just basically jumping up and down. Oh, they're gonna launch the full frame camera next. They're gonna launch a full frame camera next. And obviously, years has passed, and we have not seen a full frame Olympus cameras. And obviously, now it's become an OM system. Do you think they should have done it?
You asking me, or are you asking?
I'm asking
the audience?
I'm asking you and audience.
How many full frame systems do we need? How many? Do we need another one? How is systems going to gain any traction in a market already saturated with full frame systems fighting amongst themselves for not the largest user base?
Yeah.
I would worry about that. I think with the pen, Olympus did something nobody else is doing. With the OMD, sorry Jimmy, I think it's doing stuff that other people are doing.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the way to succeed, because you're always going to be fighting for percentages, and you're not necessarily going to have a very memorable product. Now, if Olympus, I said it again, if OM System could produce something like the old OM1 or OM2 in a full frame format, maybe like the Nikon ZF, that could be interesting. But then it's got to invest in a whole bunch of lenses, and does it really have the resources or the will to do that? I don't know.
No, but I think you hit the nail there, and this is the sole reasons why Panasonic entered the L mount alliance, to team up with Sigma and also Leica. So they know for a start that Sigma will have a whole bunch of lenses that can be instantly converted into L mount. And so they have at least some access to lenses to start with, even though the Panasonic at the time only had one or two to launch right at the beginning. But they have access to at least 10 or so lenses when the L mount first came out. So that is probably one of the reasons why they did that. But yeah, like you said, I think Olympus was wise not to enter the full frame market, and that's in my opinion anyway. I know that many people may wish Olympus had a full frame camera, but who wouldn't? We all greedy photographers. We all want everything from your beloved brands, right? So you want to have everything. Having a very kind of enthusiastic film OM1 users, of course, I would like to see a full frame 35mm film, digital version of the original OM1. That will be kind of, more or less the digital ZF kind of, but in Olympus, in an Olympus way. That will be, my dream. If that day ever comes, and that will be cool. You can use all the legacy OM lenses, and that will be kind of like, wow, that would be my dream camera. But we know where they come from, and I think the Micro Four Third platform as a whole, I think it's come to the point. I think it's very mature. I think is that we have enough lens selections there to do literally anything that we need, and also I think there's no need to fight in the bigger world when you are pretty much safe in a kind of very enclosed bubble in a way. And but I would like, in the meantime, I would like to see like a strategy how Olympus / Panasonic or anyone in the Micro Four Third members to grow this bubble in a way, and to attract more users. So that
Bring
that
back
would
the
be
pen. Bring back the pen.
that will be my interest lies. I mean, as a user myself, I'm happy. I'm really happy. I'm using my OM1 Mark II. I'm using all my other older Micro Four Third cameras, including some Panasonic cameras. So I'm happy as a Micro Four Third user. But then, but at the same time, I would like to see a more a thriving future for the platform itself. And even though many people have predicted, many people had commented before saying that Micro Four Third is going to die, like full frame is going to rule the world, kind of thing, and that was talked about 10 years ago, and then things haven't really changed much since. And so it's still around, but I just really want to see a clear strategy from all the Micro Four Third Alliance members, and to see whether they can kind of rejuvenate the interest in the format, to bring in more new blood into the system.
So I've got two ideas. One of them is two. I know one's bad enough. Two. So one of them is Panasonic does two formats, but it doesn't have the same kind of scalability that other manufacturers have, because there is no scalability from Panasonic's MFT range to its full frame range. It's a different mount. There is no crop mode for the MFT sensors. They are basically two entirely separate camera ranges made by the same brand. And if OM System did go into full frame, I can't see any way it could avoid being in that same situation. There is no way to scale the MFT mount up to full frame, and no way to make a full frame camera. Well, maybe there is to use MFT lenses, but the difference in the sensor size is so great it would be a bit silly. So with full frame and APS-C cameras, you've got a kind of roughly 1.5 times crop factor. So yeah, you could use a full frame lens on an APS-C camera. I can't see any logic to using a full frame lens on an MFT camera. But that's irrelevant, because there is no mount compatibility to do that. So if OM System went full frame, the brand would be the same. The cameras and the lenses would be absolutely separate, with absolutely no crossover. Yeah. That would be a bit of a technical drawback. I forgot my other idea. Probably just as well. It'll come back to me.
I'm just reading some comments here, and Ton just mentioned about the Alice camera. Yep, I think they started delivering now, so that's a good news from them. And I would like to hear some updates from them very soon. I probably in fact, I actually got it right here still, and that's the pre-production sample Alice camera still with me, and so you can see right here, and. So for those who are fortunate enough to get a first batch of Alice camera, and please do get in touch and see what sort of experience you may have, and we'd love to hear from you. But yeah, I think that the Micro Four Third world is secure, but not growing as fast as I would like to see, and I think that's kind of thing that I would like to say. And at the same time, I really hope the more members going to join, and in fact there are more members joining, but I just can't see them doing anything like very constructive at this moment in time, because a lot of the new members in the Micro Four Third Alliance majority of them are lens makers, so they just basically join the alliance so they get access to technical documents and they can produce lenses for the mount. And so I would like to see some more solid kind of evidence, and to see that they are doing something for the platform, bringing out new camera, bringing out new stuff, and that will be something that I'm looking forward to. But anyway, now let's move on a little bit now. So the full frame. Go on.
Could I just say one thing? I've remembered my other idea. Okay, but I also wanted to call out something Luke Taylor has said. He's managed to say in a sentence what takes me about 15 minutes. OM System misread the market. They killed the Pen F because they thought pros were the only future. As we observe now, the consumer enthusiast market is huge. So yes, they thought pros were the only future. That didn't happen. It's the opposite. And the other thing is, if OM System did go full frame, make it L mount, and then get Panasonic and Sigma to just reskin some of their lenses for a retro look. That could work. That would be a way. Anyway, that's me done. Carry on.
I'm just looking at Angela. Angela has a comment for you actually. Fuji also has two incompatible systems like Panasonic. Difference is that the medium format from the market perspective is seen as a secondary, but full frame is seen as the primary system.
It's difficult. I think one of the issues perhaps for Fujifilm and Hasselblad is that the medium format cameras have bigger sensors, but they're not exactly medium format as we understand it. They're like kind of APS-C medium format, so they're better than full frame in terms of being bigger, but they're not that much bigger. So it's not like 35mm in medium format used to be. The difference is quite a lot smaller. But yeah, Angela is quite right that the Fujifilm systems are from the same maker, but they're entirely separate. Technically, physically, they're two different systems.
Yes, and I think it's interesting how Fuji. We talked a little bit about Fuji last weekend, and not last week, the week before last, and we talked about Fuji as a brand, and it's certainly very interesting how they continued two separate lines, but in a very, very different target audience altogether. And you can very much tell that the APS line is aiming for a certain type of photographer / creator, while the medium format is purely for commercial and high-end photographers, even though it has video features, but then they're not really aiming for anyone who's using it to filming, because it isn't really a filming cameras.
Oh, actually, I don't know. I don't know, because I think the GFX line has now become, I mean, cheap is relative, but it's become so cheap. I think it is attracting enthusiasts who often have more money than we think. In its latter days,
like I said, Rod, every photographer, enthusiast or not, are buying professional cameras.
They've all got more money than me. That's why
they have more money than me. They're all buying like £4,000 or £5,000 cameras.
So I don't want to digress from the topic, but I would just say that it's near in the end now, but the GFX 50S2 costs less than many higher end full frame cameras now, even with the lens. The other thing is that the GFX 100S2 and the GFX 100 do actually have quite serious video features. They are on a level with most full frame cameras, even the professional ones, and only very slightly behind the very best. So things are changing all the time.
Yeah. Absolutely. So okay, let's go back to the Olympus, and I think we kind of reaching the end of Olympus time now, and we're going to move on the timeline a little bit now into OM System. So obviously, that for those who know that during COVID, and that was the time when the switchover came on, and from Olympus to OM System. So I don't want to repeat all the historical things about the companies involved. So let's move on to, as a brand, as a user, as a photographer, and how we see the brand as they're doing right now, and also maybe perhaps to have a little discussion about what they should, what you are expecting them to do in the future. So let's look at the changeover, and just to clarify a couple of things. And obviously, many of us still kind of in love with the original Olympus branding on all their products, whether it's been on the lens, on the prism housing or whatnot. And as of the OM5 and the OM1 Mark II, you saw the Olympus name disappear from the actual camera itself. Let me know how you feel about it. I know many would come on saying no. But obviously there's a legal reasons for it, and so that's something that we understand. Correct, right?
You can't change it. It's happened. It is what it is. We have to get over it. All I'd say is if you can't bear the idea of the Pen F saying OM System F or Pen F, then it could be just OMD Pen F. How about that? Compromise.
I think they just leave it as Pen F. I think that would be good if there's a Pen F.
It would be fine. It'd be fine. Yeah, yeah.
Because like we said, right, Pen has a value. Pen has a brand. You know, it's already
every
a brand.
every manufacturer has to have its corporate logo somewhere.
Yeah, at the bottom of the plate.
It's like having a dog. It's like having a dog that has to pee on the tree. You have to have a logo there, just to show you've been there.
So that's the clarification I want to make. You know, like for those who are expecting Olympus name to come back, you know, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So every product you're going to see from now on is going to bear this new logo, the new name.
Yeah.
In fact, if you look at the website now, the web shop, if you go into the Olympus web shop, official web shop, you will start to see a lot of the lens images that are CG, and you see the OM System branding on the lenses now, even though that you can still buy them with Olympus name on it. But as soon as those stock run out, as long as those stock run out, and you will start receiving the new batch, which it's going to be OM System branding. So for those who are Olympus loyalists, and if you still want some lenses that are still bear the Olympus branding, and probably it's time to go for it. And because sooner or later, or when the old stock run out, and all the new batches, all the new lenses are going to be OM System. They're all very much identical, apart from a couple of them, like the 12 to 40 f2.8 Mark II, which has new coating, but technically it's still the same lens. So there's subtle differences there. It's not going to be technically any different to the original version. But most of the lenses will be simply a rebranding exercise because of what the reason we just talked about. So for those who can still see some Olympus lenses that you want to get in the very near future, I think it is time to do something. But anyway, so branding aside, let's look at the current directions. And as you already mentioned, that the core strategy is very much outdoor, very much into the wildlife categories, which is, I must say, like they play to their advantage. They are playing with their strength at this moment in time, from how I see it, and based on their focus on the OMD line, especially simply because they needed a slightly bigger body to hold bigger lenses for certain things, and I think that they did particularly well with all these long telezoom lenses, and that's why you see a lot of them lying around in trade shows more than actual smaller prime lenses, because I think it's probably playing to the mindset of how ordinary photographers see lenses in general, because we often say comparison between full frame cameras and full frame lenses to micro four thirds lenses and camera bodies, they're not what they used to be, because especially nowadays we see smaller full frame bodies, smaller full frame lenses that are comparable. I'm not saying features or build or quality, but in terms of size only, you can see that they're quite comparable to some of the micro four thirds counterparts. So what's your take on it? When someone come up to you to say, Rod, I can get a full frame camera smaller than a micro four thirds. I can get equivalent setup with a couple of primes smaller than a micro four thirds for not much, for about the same money.
It won't be true. You won't get an equivalent setup with the equivalent primes that are smaller. It's the lenses that are going to scupper that comparison. I think there are small full frame lenses, but they come with fairly considerable compromises. Sony makes some very nice ones. It's got a 24 f3.5. It's all right. It's not great. It's all right. There's a 42.5 and a 52.5. They're very small, but they are f2.5, which is not fast for a prime. So all these smaller full frame lenses, it's all been achieved with a compromise here or a compromise there, not necessarily obvious. So the example I always give is the new Sony 16 to 25 f2.8, not that big for full frame, and the 24 to 50 2.8, again not that big, but they have got a very short zoom range. So something had to give, and that was it. So I think it's always going to be the size of the lenses, which I don't know whether this is where you intended this should go, Jimmy, but one of my feelings is that I don't think OM System, and perhaps even Olympus, properly capitalized on the smaller format for lens design. So my question is, why did we never get, apart from what you mentioned earlier, why did we never get f2 zooms? Because if you can make f2.8 zooms for APS-C in full frame, surely it can't be hard to make an f2 zoom.
Well, they're making 1.8. Well, Panasonic does have 1.8, right? You know, the 1.8 prime, although they're humongous.
It's the 1.8 is massive, and also it's designed for cinema, really, isn't it? So it's got a price and a size to match. But surely, technically speaking, it's a smaller sensor. You've got a smaller image circle to cover. I don't quite understand why it shouldn't be possible to make an f2 zoom rather than an f2.8. Obviously, it's not. What do I know? But I'm just saying, why did it never happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting thoughts, because it did came across my mind when I bought the 40-150 f2.8 Pro. You know, when I first got it, and I thought, I mean, it's a great lens. You know, like it's actually one of my main workhorses. And it's great. Give me great range. Give me a constant f2.8 aperture. But to me, I could sacrifice the 50 millimeters in long end, but give me an f2 aperture. So keep around about the same sort of length, maybe just a little bit fatter, just to allow more light into this into the lens. I don't mind that, you know. But you have an f2 lens, zoom lens, for roughly about the same size. So that would be quite interesting, given the fact that I actually own the 35-100 f2 zoom from the 430. I do actually have it, and it's a very interesting lens, and it's still fully capable using on the OM1 and the EM1 Mark III, whatever, whichever camera that supports face detect. So those camera works very well with via an adapter, and I love that lens a lot. It gives me a very unique rendering. It gives me very good subject separation because it's an f2 lens. So it's phenomenal. It's just that because it was designed for DSLR, and the lens itself was pretty big and heavy. But I'm pretty certain that they can do something about it with the Micro Four Third system and make it smaller, slightly more compact. And like I said, I don't mind sacrificing a little bit of the range to to keep it relatively light while having a bigger aperture.
I mean, for a while, I owned a Sigma 18-35 f1.8 zoom for APS-C.
Yeah,
it is a good lens. One of the things I should never have sold, Jimmy. This is bringing about lots of pain. But this is my argument. Admittedly, it's quite a big lens, but it's a larger sensor.
Yeah.
I just wonder if Olympus and then OM System failed to exploit the advantages of the smaller sensor by making lenses that cannot be made for other formats. Yeah. And it seems to me this is one way it could have been done.
Yeah, it's certainly something to ponder, and especially I told you that recently I got the Voigtlander f0.8 Super Nocturne from Japan, and so like that lens was not much bigger than the 25mm 1.2 Pro from Olympus. Obviously, one's menu focus, one is autofocus. So let's throw into the mix. Let's say that lens is autofocus. It's not going to be double the size. It's going to be a little bit bigger, that's for sure. But you get an autofocus f0.8 lens, so it is achievable, and the size is not going to be humongous like the f0.95 Nikkor lenses. And
it's a smaller image circle. You would think optically that would give you the opportunity to make a physically smaller lens.
Yeah.
Because
I don't know if you recall, like probably about a few months ago now, we talked about a halo lens. I don't know if you remember the conversation we talked about. And I think I said every system or every brand should have a halo design, a halo lens that's kind of like the Leica Noctilux. It's almost like a lens that draw people into it and or have a conversation with. Whether you own it or not is another thing, but you want something to scream, that is what the system can achieve. Like the Micro Four Thirds, like you said, has a smaller image circle. You can make something really, really crazy.
Yeah,
You know,
it make something you can't make for any other format. Yeah,
have a 0.8 aperture.
That's what we haven't really had, I don't think.
Yep. So, that's certainly a very interesting thought, and I think that perhaps someone is pondering in the back and an R&D somewhere, and hopefully that is true. We can only hope. We can only hope. So that certainly is interesting. I'm just looking at some comments at the moment. And,
yeah, I've just been skewered by John Krause, who says, "I wonder if Rod likes a pen." No, dreadful camera, John. Dreadful.
No, he just bought one.
Yeah, well.
I saw another comment earlier. It said, I'm just trying to find it now. It's saying something talked about I can't remember. I can't find it. I can't seem to find it now. But someone was asking, has OM System got the rights to use the pen?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Very good question. I wondered. So that's Linda Marks. I wonder if OM even have the rights to the pen name. I wonder.
Yeah, that's a good question. I have no idea, but I would have
Fingers
thought.
crossed.
I would have thought during the transition time, and obviously it was the entire camera business that's been carved out from Olympus, so that would have included all the camera brands under that umbrella at the time, which including pen.
Yeah, but
So,
could it be the reason there have been no new pens?
Not
They
entirely
could
sure.
carry on selling the old one because it's already being manufactured. So we could start a whole new conspiracy theory, couldn't we?
Oh no, I can't do that.
Okay. No.
Okay, right.
So no, it's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, that's certainly very interesting. And just to go back to a little bit of the, I can see Nelsie here got a comment here. Yes, full frame has a smaller f2.8 or f3.5 with a smaller size compared with M3, M4 third. But full frame can also increase the ISO to compromise shutter speed and still got better image quality. What's your take on that? I did a video specifically on this, and so what's your take on this?
It's a complicated interaction. I think if you're arguing full frame is just as good because you get better high ISO quality, which you'll need for shooting at faster shutter speeds because the apertures are smaller, you're getting into a complicated kind of circular argument where you end up in exactly the same place. So you could say, oh, full frame is better because you get better quality and you can afford lower aperture lenses. Well, you kind of accepting one compromise in exchange for a benefit. It doesn't seem like you've got very far. So I'm not convinced by that at all. I think also the size factor is another thing. I think Angela made the remark that a lot of full frame systems now have 150 to 600 lenses or somewhere around that kind of range to target the same kind of birding audience that OM System is going for. I don't think it's quite the same thing. My experience of consumer super telephoto zooms is that for the same money, you get less quality. If that makes any kind of sense. To make a lens of that range, at that kind of price, you're not going to get the same levels of sharpness and performance at full zoom as you would from a professional lens. So I'm not sure you're really comparing like with like. I don't think you can compare a consumer full frame lens with a professional MFT lens. I think the experience is going to be a bit different.
Yeah,
but we'll have to wait for people to do proper tests, which I haven't done.
Yeah, but from a shooting experience point of view, and I could echo a thing or two, because I one of my videos is specifically talking about the format size differences, because as many of you know that I also photograph weddings, and there was one particular wedding that I did a couple of years ago, when my assistant was using a full-frame Sony A7 camera, and from his files, I can clearly see the differences between my set and his set, and because obviously I have his files for me to deliver to the clients. But it's interestingly, if you're looking at in the live situations, in real life situations when it comes to shooting is that a majority of the time when I was shooting that particular wedding, my ISO range was only between the base ISO for Olympus camera, which is 200, and I occasionally dabble into 3200 in a very, very dim environment. But even indoor, I was maxing out at 800. I didn't use anything faster than 800, only because I was using a lot of the 1.2 Pro prime lenses. I have a lot of light into the sensor. On the other hand, my assistant was using A7 full frame, and he has a 2.8 2470 G Master lens on it. But he often have to stop, push the ISO very high and stop the lens down further to get depth of field that he needed to cover, certain scenarios. And to my surprise, he used a very high ISO for majority of his shooting, even in a very well lit environment. So that's kind of interesting study in a way, case study for me, how people utilize full frame cameras these days, and to achieve similar thing that what I would do on a with a Micro Four Thirds cameras. Having said that, remember I also mentioned before, I used to be a Canon shooter, so I used a Canon DSLR, and I could echo the same thing, because I went during the back in the days, even though that there was some technical limitation of the sensor, because the maximum I can push the sensor was 6400, and that's extended because native only goes up to 3200 in the 5D Mark II, so I can't go anything further than that. So anything I can't go further, I just have to pop the flash. That's as simple as that. I can't do anything more, and so I can't quite compare the days when I was with full frame Canon cameras compared to what people are doing these days with natural light and push the ISO up. But all I can say is that from that particular wedding, I found that the differences from when people have to use a smaller aperture to achieve similar sort of effects compared to Micro Four Thirds while pushing the ISO up, it kind of mitigate the advantage of having a full frame camera, because when I looked at the file deep down, look at it, when I was processing the photos, I found that when you're pushing the ISO to 12,800, 50 to 51,200, you're getting into REM, regardless of format, it's gonna have noise. So and that noise is worse than Micro Four Thirds and 1600, that's for sure. So that is something that is not comparable at all. And yes, you can say that may have better resolutions. You can still process it, make it look cleaner in a way, aesthetically. But technically, when I look at the photos, and I just can't see the advantage in that particular moment in time, and having to push the ISO up to compensate a smaller aperture.
I think there are lots of things in these comparisons people make that worry me a little bit. So SL7293 says full frame manufacturers could build lenses as small as M43. An f8 to f11.2 full frame zoom should be the equivalent of an f4 to 5.6 without compromising image quality. This is a mathematical argument which only works in a certain dimension. So what I mean is that you can have an equivalence in depth of field, but if you're shooting with at f8 to f11 on full frame instead of f4 to f5.6, you're going to have to increase the ISO to compensate, and increasing it enough to compensate, you're taking away all the advantage of the bigger sensor. So this is what I mean by a kind of circular argument. You're comparing full frame to MFT, saying, oh, if you play by the same rules, you can get the same results. We're not talking about getting the same results. We're talking about getting better results from going to full frame. It's not a straightforward argument. No, and I think as well, anyone who argues that you can make a small aperture full frame lens as small as Micro Four Thirds, perhaps has not tried shooting with Canon's 600 and 800 f11 lenses. F11, not fast, but these are still big lenses, make no mistake. So I'm not quite satisfied you can make these comparisons and assume that full frame can be made as good as MFT, because they're two different formats with two different sets of optical requirements and considerations that don't lend themselves to that kind of arithmetic comparison, in my opinion.
Yeah. I'm just reading two more new comments there. Nelsie saying that the A7C2 having the 52.5, even the pushing the ISO up, is still have better quality. And Mike Cruz also said similar things about the 600 f11 fixed aperture lens. It is pretty good for the price.
It is. It's really good. I mean, it's considered a bit of a joke lens because it's f11.
Yeah.
Really good lens for the money. I'm not going to argue with that at all. I'm impressed.
Yeah, and also don't forget, there's another thing that I haven't mentioned, but you guys probably have to watch that video that I made to fully appreciate what I was saying right here. And is basically not just about pushing ISO up as well. It's also about usability in certain scenarios and situations. For instance, going back to the wedding that I talked about, and very often when you are photographing wedding, you need depth of field to cover certain amount of people in focus. So like it's not just about isolating one subject at a time. You know, that in that case, you know, like you can forget about anything. You can use whatever lenses, whatever aperture you want. However, when you have a group to cover, and that's when you have to be very careful about your depth of field, and that's the time when you're starting to see struggles with full frame, because they need to, you know, depending on what sort of lens choice they use at that moment in time. With your ultra wide, that may not be so bad, but if you're having like a 50mm lens, for instance, if you want to cover a group in front of you, you might often have to stop down to 5.6, 6.3 to cover, while the Micro Four Thirds I could use simply just stop down to f2, 2.8, and to get the same depth of field to cover everybody in sharp focus. And the difference can be significant when you have the one is using ISO 400, the other one is using 1600. So that you can say, okay, 1600 is still going to be cleaner in full frame, but then again, we're talking about similar sort of quality. I don't see many differences between the two in real life situations anyway. And I'm not a pixel peeper, just to clarify that. You know, I'm a photographer. I actually photograph and print them in albums, and everything that I print and deliver to my clients is no difference in whatever format I use. And also to clarify for those who are just joining us right now, I also have full frame cameras and also APS-C. So for those who think that I'm just a Micro Four Thirds diehard, I also use other formats to cover, because I just have to pick the right tool for the right job. So I'm not necessarily trying to rave about Micro Four Thirds here, but also just trying to clarify usability, the in real life situation, how a photographer should be appreciating advantages of certain format instead of trying to criticize another.
Yeah, and I think a lot of these comparisons between formats, I think, do leave out some important features. You just made a remark about one, and that is depth of field. We always imagine less depth of field is better. Not actually true. So your genre, Jimmy, is social and wedding photography. Mine is more landscape and travel. And for travel photography in particular, full frame is a mixed blessing, because you don't, if we're using anything longer than about, say, 24mm, you're not going to get everything sharp. You could shoot at f16 if you like, which will help. You'll get diffraction, as you will with any format at a smaller lens aperture. But my point is that if I shoot full frame, I'm going to have to accept that there'll be lots of scenes where the main stuff is sharp, other stuff not quite sharp.
Yeah.
And that can be a bit aggravating, because that can look like a mistake. If you're photographing a middle distance subject and the background isn't quite crisp, it looks it doesn't look like a very professional image. It should either be as crisp as the middle ground, or it should be deliberately blurred. If something is just slightly soft, it starts to look like a mistake. And it's a subtle thing to try and get across. But this is where I find full frame quite challenging for that kind of photography, because you're never going to get a lot of depth of field. So you have to shoot differently to either get around that, or choose subjects where you can create shallow depth of field for effect.
And similar can be said for macro photography. Macro is always struggling with depth of field, right? You know, and then when you get so close, and that is why Micro Four Thirds is also very good at macro photography, simply because inherently it's got more depth of field to play with. So you are stacking less images if you really need to stack them, or if you just want to handheld something like just a one-shot thing, and you often find that Micro Four Thirds is actually slightly better in max sort of close-up distance shooting than a full-frame camera. Because I remember the days that I used to have the 100 f2.8 macro and the full-frame cameras, and it's really difficult to get a usable image and without stopping down to f8 if you're getting really close. And even with that, the depth of field is still too shallow in most cases, and by then it's just really difficult without having to stack images.
Yeah, I think you're probably going to have to do focus stacking even with MFT, with really kind of one-to-one macro stuff. But you do notice it with things in the middle, which are kind of interim close-ups, you might say. The shallower depth of field, it can be a wonderful thing creatively. It can be a darn nuisance creatively too. So it's not just one thing or the other. I still can't get this argument about full frame, smaller aperture lenses being just as small and just as good. I think why choose a format where you have to choose 2 or 3 different lens designs to get the same result? Where does that really get you? I don't know. I think if 20 megapixels is enough, and you need depth of field more than you need shallow depth of field, why are you having this kind of internal debate? If you must have a larger sensor and shallow depth of field, get that, but don't try and say that you can make a larger sensor camera behave like MFT, because that doesn't actually work.
No. So in summary, basically, like if you want some, you can get like a multiple system to, just to get the right tool for the right job. We keep saying that.
Yeah, get 2 cameras.
Yeah, very often now, I can ask everybody who's listening right now, I'm pretty sure you have more than one cameras, right? And very often you probably have 2 or 3 different formats, MFT, full frame, APS-C, whatever. You're gonna have something very different and for different things altogether. Like we say, full frame is really beneficial for a lot of things. Like low light capability. Like if you shoot a lot of low light stuff, if you do a lot of really extreme kind of challenging lighting situations, and full frame is still going to be edging out for compared to Micro Four Thirds, without a doubt. I mean, technically they are better because the larger sensor, you got better photo sites, absorbing more lights, and that's all the technical thing you hear about day in day out. That is true, and that is fact. So I'm not trying to alter that. But you, as a photographer, I guess you just have to judge it for yourself based on your experience, based on what type of photography you do, what sort of thing you do in a daily basis. Then decide what system is best for your needs, rather than trying to think of one system can be everything. Which you and I know that there's no perfect system, no perfect camera out there. It just there isn't. If you want something light, you really can't beat Micro Four Thirds. If you want something that would give you the ultimate, kind of shallow depth of field, you can't beat full frame with an f0.95 lens. You can't. It's simple as that. If you want depth of field, go for the bigger system, go for the large aperture lenses, and you can't have both. Unfortunately, you can't have like shallow depth of field and ultra light and ultra small. You just can't have that.
I don't think you can, and I think also you can't just choose the camera you like and then tell everybody else they've got the wrong one. We have to. We can't do that. That's just not the way to go about things. We all have to choose a camera that's right for us.
Absolutely. So now, come to the big elephants in the room now. And
I thought that was it. Oh, gosh.
No, just only because there's a comment that I just read, and I know it's been repeated a couple of times earlier. But Angela's has a point right here. But it's quite good to clarify this point as well. OM System is focusing on wildlife and birding, but only has one camera, the OM1, for their audience, which is 2,700 for the body, and is 7,500 USD lens, which I presume you're talking about the 150-400 Pro lens, the White Beast, the big long zoom lens with the built-in 1.25 times. Yeah, the 4.5 Pro lens, yes, with the built-in teleconverter.
So just to clarify, can you remind me of the focal range for that, Jimmy?
150 to 400.
So that's equivalent to 300 to 800.
Yep.
F4.5.
F4.5 with
a built-in teleconverter. Now I've got no axe to grind here, but find me the full frame equivalent.
None. Yeah. But then again, his obviously his point was, how can a wildlife and birder enter the system on the
Oh,
cheap point, right?
it's
So this is
the
the interesting thing. I think this is interesting because if you're purely looking at price point, full frame will be even more significant, right, Rod?
Well, I don't know of an equivalent lens to that, and if you follow the argument that full frame offers you a choice of cheaper consumer zooms or high end pro zooms or high end super telephoto lenses, can we just be clear that any fast super telephoto prime from Canon or Nikon or Sony is well on the wrong side of £10,000 or dollars? So this is not a kind of this is not an idea you should throw into the argument without taking it seriously. There are a lot of money. Forget about the size. Just look at the money. That is a lot. So I think the OM system 150 to 400 is expensive, but that is nothing. That is nothing compared to full frame professional telephoto primes.
Yeah, and having said that, there is obviously recently the 100 to 600 super zoom, was it 200 for 600? I can't remember now, and that is a lot cheaper than the 150 to 400 lens that we just mentioned. That's probably a third of the price. So that is a pretty viable option, although it's not as fast aperture-wise compared to a constant 4.5 aperture. This one is a variable aperture, 5.6 to 6.3. But it's decent enough. In good light, I don't think you're gonna suffer too much compared to the other lens there. And obviously, build quality is different. The other one is definitely a notch above when it comes to build and quality. However, when you talk about entry point, there are cheaper options that you can do. And having said that, Olympus also had other lenses like the 100-400 consumer lens, which is about £1,200 in the UK, so in dollars probably about $2,000, and also 300 f4 Pro. There's a prime, and which is about the same price, and then you have the generic 40 to 150 f2.8 Pro, which is really, really good lens. If you want to reach, throw in a 1.4 or 2 times converters there, that will give you the reach without sacrificing too much of light gathering in the long end. So there are some options there. Obviously, you're not getting as close to those super telezoom lenses, and those are very specific, very high end lenses for that type of photography. And I think that there are numerous options if you really want to get into birding and wildlife, and over time, if you're really getting into the hobby, we're really getting into things just like anything else. You start upgrading, start investing, then that's the point when you're thinking, okay, maybe I should get a better lens, a more expensive lens, because I think for people who want to enter wildlife and birding, a photographer shouldn't start off with the ultra expensive stuff anyway, because you don't know whether you are going to stick with it for a start, and second, you may not have the skill to actually maximizing whatever you have.
Well, I think that there's a couple of things. I think one of them is that we should not underestimate what people will spend on their hobby. If you're doing this professionally, you'll have to weigh it up very carefully, because you have to weigh the cost against the benefit. But for enthusiasts, do not imagine enthusiasts don't have any money. They will often spend alarming amounts of money on their hobby. People spend tens of thousands on classic cars. So a few thousand on a lens doesn't seem like it's in a kind of different territory. And I think the other thing is that the birding and wildlife is a tricky territory, because more than any other area of lens design, you definitely do get what you pay for. You can get lots of cheaper consumer zooms that cover the same focal range, but they will not offer the same definition across that focal range. It's just one of the frustrating aspects of being into this kind of photography, that good lenses do unfortunately cost quite a lot of money. So I guess my suggestion would be that with the MFT system and with OM Systems approach today, which is to focus on this birding market, they have at least got the benefit of very good quality lenses that are actually remotely affordable. And I think that if you want to compare formats, I think you will find more difference in the quality, in the lens quality and its effect on the final image quality than you will from sensor size. Because a lens that isn't sharp, it'll be obvious on any format. But a lens that is sharp can be better. So I'm saying this very badly. A sharp professional lens on MFT can give you a better result than a very average sort of lens on full frame. That's been my experience. Others may have a different opinion. That's been my experience.
Yep. That certainly is. Obviously, there are other factors to play
There
with.
are lots of factors.
There are absolutely, like resolutions to come into play, but it's also how you view the images and so forth. But we try not to get into the nitty gritty there, because otherwise it can get very, very complicated. We don't want to have another hour discussion just talk about image quality there.
Quite.
But yeah, it's just kind of carry on from this conversation here about wildlife and birding, and because obviously this is OM System's core strategy right now, as you said earlier. Your frustration about your experience, and I don't know how many of you felt kind of left out if you are not in the same camp as what OM System is playing right now, and I can give you a send or two about from my end, because obviously you all know that I don't photograph birds or wildlife, and do I feel left out? Occasionally I do, from a photographer point of view, from a user point of view, simply because I don't see a lot of the promotional material, a lot of the messages coming out are something that I am personally interested in, because I'm just not a bird. I'm not a bird watcher. I'm not a bird photographer. I'm not a macro photographer. I do go outdoor. I do travel. I do hikes. I do take photos of landscape from time to time, but I'm not a through and through outdoor person when I have to go out and with my boots on and a backpack, go out for camp for 3 days and do something amazing. I'm not that type of person. I live in the city and photograph people. So yes, I do feel left out from time to time. However, as a photographer, as you know, we use our gear to our advantage, whatever our skill sets is based on. So in that case, I just use the cameras, and I feel that no matter what they do, what they promote, we all know that they promote certain features only relating to whatever they're promoting at the time. So to me, they are kind of irrelevant at the same time. So like, even though they may be promoting a lot of things that is more beneficial for birders, for wildlife photography, macro, whatever, but also at the same time, I have to look at the cameras or the lens, whatever, and how I see it as gear itself. Whether I can maximize the use of the cameras, like the OM Mark II, for instance, that came out recently. For me, I think the biggest advantage for me, particularly for that camera, is the Live Grad ND, and that's probably one feature I use a lot when I go travel. Anything else, I'm not even an astrophotographer, so I don't use Starry Sky AF even when they first introduced in the EM1 Mark III time, and I don't use other things that all the AI recognition mode I don't use apart from human now, and so you just have to kind of judge yourself whether a camera is still good for you. I don't think the message actually or whatever strategy that OM System is focusing at the moment really mattered to me that much. And when it comes to product launches, because at the end of the day, they're producing a camera. They're producing a camera for photographers, and they just simply making it happen. And for whatever the marketing department decided at that time, what they should be focusing on is completely separate to the actual product itself. That's my 2 cents.
It kind of is, but I think it just makes people who are not into that territory feel a little bit nervous. I mean, from my point of view, what I want from the OM system, I already have. It's not obsolete. I can get what I need and what I want. I've got my own a couple of new lenses. I can get those. My concern is that may not last forever. So one day they might decide, well, we don't need to make these f1.8 primes anymore, because who shoots birds with f1.8 primes? It's the future plans to make me nervous. So I understand what you're saying about marketing. Marketing messages come and go, but this one's been with us for a little while and is just leaving me feeling a little bit concerned, a little bit excluded, because it makes you wonder, well, will this ever change? Is this how it's going to be now? And if it is, then the gear I've got will be good for me for years to come.
Yeah.
But at some point, it'll become obsolete, and that'll be it.
And I think Angela just echoed your message right there, and just bringing it out here, and
Yeah.
yep, that's pretty much what you just said.
So like when I visited the Olympus stand at this show, again, I don't want to get anyone into trouble. They're doing what they've been told to do. It's fine. They only saw the 9 to 18 lens as being a kind of an odd occasional lens for wildlife and bird photographers in specific instances. They didn't see it as I did, as a kind of staple lens for almost everything I might want to do. So it's this difference in attitude. It's just a little bit bothersome for me. They don't understand me anymore. My camera company doesn't understand me.
Oh dear. Well, we at the moment it's kind of hard to say, and I mean, I think because we all know Olympus quite well, from the past, and I mean, they've been around for years, and OM. Even though they have carried on from Olympus, and but they have new management, they have new personnel in the company. For me, even though it has been a few years already, however, I think it's still, from a company standpoint, it's still pretty much in early days. It's quite hard to kind of gauge exactly what they want to do, what they're trying to do. I know they have a focus at the moment. At least they have a focus. That's a good thing. But then, but I mean,
is it AI focus?
Yeah, focus. But I do echo some of the frustrations from users in general. That it would be good to see OM have a little bit of attention, maybe to go outside of the current core focus, and maybe perhaps into something that a lot of the MFT photographer and users are pretty fond with. For instance, travel and street photography. These are really big genre of photography that has been going quite well with the format for many years, simply because of the form factor that Micro Four Thirds is renowned for: small, and they're small primes, like you said, and they are good quality small primes, and it's been around for years, and I think for any bonuses that OM System may give us in the future is if they can update 1.8 into weather sealed lenses, and that will probably a good update, and also to satisfy at least a lot of the photographer existing users that may be want to continue to believe that OM System that still care for them.
and perhaps update the electrical contacts so that if you use manual focus, it will trigger the viewfinder magnification.
That
which,
I believe that can be done via firmware, right? I'm pretty sure they can do that.
I'm not sure whether you told me this, Jimmy. My understanding was that the contacts aren't there on the lens. I'll have a look. It seems so basic, doesn't it? If you switch to manual focus, and these lenses have a little focus clutch, which is really neat.
Yeah.
You ought to be able to turn the focus ring and have automatic focus magnification. I mean, you get that. You get with a Laowa lens, for heaven's sake, that's got electrical contacts.
Yeah.
My Laowa 10mm, if I turn the focus, the viewfinder magnifies so that I can check sharp focus. My 17mm 1.8 does not, which is a bit annoying, but tiny point. But yeah, if they do update it to include weather sealing, could they fix that as well, please? Thank you.
But yeah, it's interesting. What do you guys think about OM? And I think I can see a lot of comments already bouncing up and down. Many of you actually kind of share your views on the wildlife and outdoor strategy already, and I think quite a few of you already mentioned about the 1.8 primes and street and travel photography. There is certainly a very established customer base. From Olympus' point of view, not about OM, but from an Olympus point of view, there was an established user base out there that is primarily using it for a lot of genre that mainly within street and travel. It really is because that's the strength of OM System camera gear, because they were light and small, and then that kind of fit into the whole profile of being discreet on the street or being light for travel, and I think to a certain extent OMs does continue that kind of message with the OM5, not so much of OM1 but OM5. They're certainly trying to highlight how small it is, and they often pair the OM5 in the advert, at least that I see, with the 21.4 and the 12 to 45 f4 Pro lenses. They are all tiny lenses, so they're trying to showcase that, but yet again they still having the subject in the advert campaign in the mountain, in the valleys, not so much in the urban territories. So it's still kind of like a slightly different message out there, and rather than a full-on street photography scene, in a busy street kind of thing. Yeah,
I think the OM5 message is still very much about outdoor adventure, isn't it? Which is kind of, I think it probably sees being tangential to bird photography, the same kind of genre. It's not really a street camera at all. Maybe travel of a kind of rugged outdoor kind, but I don't think it's even been put forward as a travel camera, really. Which is a change. It's a decent camera, the OM5.
it is.
Even more decent if it had some metal on the top plate, but let's not go there.
I love the OM5. I really do love it, and I often travel with it just because it's small. It's just a lightweight camera, full feature lightweight camera that can do a lot. Especially
it does
when
a
you have
lot.
the right lenses. Yeah, it
does a lot. Yeah.
And for those who are listening, give us your comments about what you think or what you're hoping OM would do in the future. We'd like to hear your comments and your view, and hopefully there's some of these will be filtered and feedback to them at some point, and that'll be quite interesting to see exactly how you guys are thinking, if you're an existing user or if you are considering adding OM System gear or any Michael Four Thirds gear in your arsenal of lenses and gear. What do you want from Michael Four Thirds as a platform? And because we all know the strength, we all know what it can do for us, many of us, whether you're going to be in still photography or videos, as demonstrated in both Panasonic and OM System, and something that I think would be quite interesting to see from your side. I know what I want, and then let's see what you want. Because next week we go. Probably not next week, but the following week. How long are you going to be going away, Rot?
I'm going away next week, but I'm going to a place where I should have Wi-Fi, but I'll have to take my MacBook, and I'm not quite sure how practical it's going to be to join in. But I should find out over the weekend, so I'll let you know whether I can do that.
So at the moment, next week's Red Hot Talk is going to be a TBC, and wait until whether Rod can get a very good Wi-Fi connection over there, and but whatever it is, the next conversation is going to be Panasonic, because we would like to talk about Panasonic as well, because now we talked about OM System, we would / Olympus, we'd like to talk a little bit about Panasonic as well. And remember, we're going to have a whole series of brand talks in this podcast right here. We're going to talk about all basically any camera makers these days, including some oddballs like Ricoh's, Pentax, and Hasselblad. We're going to talk about all of them to see anyone takes your fancy, or anyone who already experienced users of these brands and cameras, and you can share a thing or two about your experience with them as well. So that will be quite interesting to learn about your experience.
Yeah, I think the most annoying thing about every camera brand is they've all got something about them that's really irritating, or not exactly how you want it to be. So none of them are perfect. Annoying, isn't it?
It is. And so after I mentioned about after I questioned you guys, and I'm starting to see some comments filtering through now. Angela say that I want to buy the OM5, but with a USB-C connection, headphone jack, and a 4K 60 10-bit.
Yeah.
Do you know what?
No. I know what you're going to say, Jimmy. I know what you're going to say.
That would be my dream too. That would be my dream.
Oh, right.
No, it is. Because I think the OM5 is phenomenal. I think the OM5 is great. But to me, this from a personal point of view, It's not too dissimilar to the EM5 Mark III, and the EM5 Mark III is already a great camera. It's a big jump from EM5 Mark II. It's got hybrid AF focus, and it's got phenomenal IBIS. It's pretty much everything I need. But given the fact that I now shoot a lot of video on the side, I do make video content, and having that extra bit of video capability, namely 60 frames per second and 10-bit, would dramatically increase the production values and the quality that I want to capture when I'm traveling. And at the moment, for me to obtain the sort of quality, I have to carry my OM1 Mark II or OM1, and or maybe even the Panasonic G9 Mark II or the GX6, to get the 10-bit and also for 4K 60. So if an OM5 size camera with that would be amazing. And the USB-C, in fact, yes, I would love to see a USB-C, because everything's USB-C now, and I do not want to carry another converter, another cable, just a separate cable to charge the camera if I need to, let's say in transit, between locations, and that will be a bonus, because all my power banks now are USB-C connectors, so it's a lot easier just to have one cable instead of having 2 or 3 different cables for different things. That will ease my pain, in a way.
Well, we all that, Jimmy.
Make things less complicated. Let's put it that way. So yes, that would actually be quite good. That would actually be quite good. So let's bring in the next comment here, and now it's comment answering time now before we we close today.
It's one cable, 3 ends. So
it's still big. It's still big.
I know, it's awful, isn't it? I thought I'd show you anyway. So it's USB-C, micro USB, and Lightning. But it seemed like a good idea at the time, but not so sure now.
Okay.
I think. Sorry, go on.
No. Keep going. I'm just reading comments.
Yeah, I was only going to say that the annoying fact is that you can drive yourself mad trying to get the one camera that does everything you want. I mean, my feeling is that if you want to shoot stills and you want to stay within a micro four thirds sphere, get an OM System camera. If you want to shoot video, dare I breathe the words, get a Panasonic and take 2 cameras, because a lot of the time you're going to have a completely different setup for video than you would for shooting stills anyway. And it seems like a very untidy clutch to have 2 cameras. But sometimes that's the quickest way.
Yeah, and I would not disagree one bit. I always say that I know that we live in a world now, we want everything, right? And so hybrid camera seems to be the solution, because it is supposed to be a still camera as much as a video camera. But the fact is, the truth is, from my experience is, I have the G9 Mark II right here, and I have the GX6, and I already pre-ordered the GX7. And GX7, no matter how you look at it, is a dedicated video camera. It has still capabilities, but for me, if I want to film anything serious, it's always going to be the camera that I'm going to carry, the GX, because it is a video camera, full stop.
I think it sounds inefficient to have 2 cameras, but it has lots of advantages. So if you have a separate camera for video, not only are you going to have the settings are going to be different. You can have your video on a different memory card, which is quite helpful, and you're also going to have a backup camera for if the battery goes on one of the other ones or whatever. But it's just you're going to have a different lens. You might have it rigged up for video, and it'll be hopeless for stills. So it does make a certain amount of sense to have 2 cameras for 2 jobs, even though it's not very elegant or very cheap.
No. And like I say, even though I have the G9 Mark II right here in front of me here, and I still use my OM1 Mark II, even though they're supposed to be a direct rival to the OM1 Mark II, but I much prefer shooting stills with the OM System cameras / Olympus cameras more than Panasonic cameras. And Panasonic still, to me, is a video camera, and I love using it for videos, and not so much about stills. Even though it's capable, I'm not saying that it's not capable, but I just prefer the ergonomics, the usabilities, and also how fluid it comes into operations. And but perhaps maybe because I'm an OM system user, long term user, so I know exactly how the system goes and the menus and things like that. But I mean, I used the Lumix cameras long enough now, been a few years, and I still prefer the OM systems from the stills point of view. And so yes, I would carry two cameras. I would bring two cameras if I want to do both.
Yeah, and I think this idea of how they work and how they like what they like to use and what you're used to is quite important. I've used so many different cameras, but for me, the Olympus dual dial system with the dual function lever is the one that sticks in my mind as being instantly logical and usable.
Yep.
So you had the I can't remember what it is for each mode, but you have like the rear dial for EV compensation, the front dial for program shift, etc. It's very memorable, very straightforward and simple to use. It's the only one I remember. I used a different camera, often for the same length of time, and it just doesn't fall into place in quite the same way. Yeah. So I think the OM system cameras have the control out pretty much nailed. So it does make a difference.
It does, especially if you shoot a lot. If speed of operation is priority,
yeah.
And I think you're quite right there.
You haven't got a lot of time to think.
No, you just have to react, get it done, and just press the shutter button.
Yeah.
And Blaine said that I do wildlife, macro, and street since I lived in metro of southern United States. I use MFT because I can carry all my lenses at a time, at any time, and it's a spontaneous system. I think the word spontaneous is a very good word there, and as I often found that, because I carry a shoulder bag most of the time when I'm out and shooting, and spontaneous is definitely a key word there, because I like to change my lenses very quickly, and often I don't like to have big lenses, and because big lenses is more difficult to change, and in a live action sequences, if you're going out and then something sudden happen, if you need to change the lens, and the big lens is always more cumbersome when it comes to changing or doing things. And having a small thing, you can do it in one-handed, is quite quick and quite easy, and you can just react to things a lot quicker and more efficiently.
I think it's a cost element too. If you're shooting in a hazardous environment, or you're doing street photography in an area you don't know, or is a bit scary, or you hang off the side of a boat trying to do a low angle shot over water. In all of these situations, I'd rather be doing it with a camera that didn't cost a lot of money than one that did. Seems a very trivial thing, but it makes a difference in my head.
Yeah. Now Neil saying, I think OM should announce a new OM10 then the Pen F. Ooh, someone's preferring the OM than the Pen.
No, you're wrong.
My friend just asked me what he can get for $700 to $800 and I look at the EM10 Mark IV, and that was too old already.
What does that mean, too old?
Yeah, that's because the thing is, I think we already talked about it, and I think you can't go wrong with any cameras, and I think people are getting used to having a yearly updates for many cameras, and they just get used to it, and I don't think it's healthy to start with, and I don't think that any current cameras that we see this year is like 100% better than last year's model. It's not. It's very, very minute, the differences there. And to be quite honest, I would guarantee 95% of photographers out there won't even notice the difference between last year's model and this year's model in real time, in real life situations. I'm not talking about technical differences or spec sheet differences, but more about real life shooting.
I think it's understandable that if a camera's not updated for several years, so you think of it as being old in that sense, that's going to make you uneasy when every other manufacturer is going through these constant changes. But you just have to look at what the camera does. And if being too old means it doesn't do something you need it to do, that's important. But I'm not sure I'm aware of anything in the OM10 Mark IV, EM10 Mark IV, I beg your pardon, that makes it obsolete. I can't think of anything. There might be something I haven't thought of, but I think it's fine. It's fine now as it was when it first came out. There's nothing it doesn't do that it needs to, in the modern world, in my opinion. So yes, it's an old camera because it's been unchanged for a while. That's the only thing that makes it old. I can't think of anything else.
Well, Sony's still selling A7.
I've got an A7 too. I've got an A7 too. How old is that? 2016. It's if you use it to shoot stills, which is what I do, it's as good as the Mark III. It's fine. It's a good stills camera. Pretty bad for video, but it's fine. It's fine.
Yep. And Chuck's saying that OM systems should make a better menu system.
It's not. I have to go along with that. I would say, in terms of the layout, I don't mind it. It's just it doesn't look very nice. It looks. I don't want to upset any Windows fans. It looks a bit Windows 95.
Does it? Does it?
Well, don't you think so? It's all a bit. It seems to me that the type is a bit small and it's all a bit over designed.
Do you know what? What
have I done now?
Now I use many different systems, and I got Leica camera here. I got OM system. I got the old Olympus cameras with old menu system, and I have Nikon system. I look at their menus. That to me, they just menu. I don't. I know that the layout is slightly different. The color coding is different. And but the thing is, it's a matter of getting used to it. To me, and I don't think it bothers me too much, because ultimately I just want to find a few features, and that really is.
I guess I'm talking about the aesthetics. So to me, that is a menu.
Yeah.
But this on my Pen F. Where's the menu button? Oh, to know, shouldn't I? Menu. That to me is all a bit titchy and fussy, and not so easy to read.
That's the older menu, though.
I know this. Yeah.
The newer menu is very Canon-like in a way. The new menu.
I can't get it with the pen though, can I, Jimmy? I can't get it with the pen. I've got to have the old menu.
Yeah. And Affairs of Arabia, and saying that I bring in the EM1X Mark II. I would like to see that. You know what? I'm a big fan of the original EM1X.
Yeah.
I really is. In fact, the camera that I'm using to stream right now is the EM1X, and I've been using this for streaming ever since I started this podcast things. And it's a phenomenal camera. I love using it for all my stills before I turn it into a webcam. And but
it's too much scary competition now, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I love the ergonomics of it. I love the indestructibility of it. It's just a very rugged camera that can't be destroyed. It's the G-Shock in the camera world. That's how I would put it. And it's
carpet's gone anymore.
I love it. Even though it's big, I know it's big for a Micro Four Thirds camera, but come on, this camera is built for professional use. That's for sure, and it can withstand anything that you throw at it. And it's a shame. Once again, it didn't catch on. I think that any system should have some big cameras. Any system. For like now, if you look back in hindsight, we just talked about the 150 to 400 Pro lens. That's a big lens.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
That is a perfect fit for the EM1X.
The bigger the camera, the better.
Yeah, so like that's a perfect fit, and now with the OM1 you have to add a grip to it to balance it better and things like that. But imagine having an E1X or OM1X, whatever you want to call it, the next one, having a built-in grip. That will be perfect for all the birders out there.
The trouble is you're trying to sell something without numbers. That's very hard these days. You've got to be able to prove your case with specifications. Not with subjective things like build quality or handling or ergonomics, because nobody believes that stuff. They only believe numbers, sadly.
Well, it's still the business at the end of the day, if you've got to satisfy the balance sheet, right? And Zach Benson is interesting, right? Limited release Pen F2 with a monochrome sensor.
Oh, that'd be nice.
That would be also my dream too, isn't it? I would like to see a monochrome Pen F, and that would be amazing. That would be amazing. Even if they keep
That'd
the
be quite
same
clever.
shape, same everything, you know, just throwing a
Yeah.
monochrome sensor there, call it a limited edition. That would be really, really cool. I think that would be really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, having a titanium body. Oh, that would be.
Steady on. Steady on.
That would be.
Let's not go mad.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Okay.
monochrome sensor variant would be quite a smart idea because you can slap on a hefty price premium for that, and people seem willing to pay it.
And more importantly, it's different to other people.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's different. It's still a pen. It's different.
Yep.
And black and white for street photographer. Oh, that's the dream combo, right? That's the dream combo. Okay, there you go. That OM system. If you're listening,
Fixed.
you know, like
Sorted.
get a monochrome pen. That will be the killer for the X106.
Yeah.
Right. And Kostov is hey 24 megapixel EM5 style body, 6 to 12 f4 lens would be great. Okay, yeah, we haven't really mentioned about new sensors, didn't we? You know, we talked a lot about OM system, and one thing we haven't quite mentioned is the sensor. We haven't seen a new sensor from, or at least not new resolution, or different resolution from OM system slash Olympus for quite a while actually, since the 20 megapixel bump from the original 16. So that's been a few years, and yeah, it would be nice to see a high resolution sensor, I suppose. And we all know that Lumix has now got the 24 megapixel or 25 megapixel sensor, effective
25,
24.
yeah.
And it would be nice. It would be nice.
It's an interesting proposition as well because I do believe that the Panasonic sensor has no AA filter, whereas the Olympus 20 megapixel sensor does. Is that correct?
Yes. And
So
it
you
does come
might
across
you
a little
might
bit
get a
sharper, yeah.
noticeable, you might get a visible change in apparent sharpness. So that would be interesting, yeah. But I think the thing is that all this shift in the market towards a whole kind of influencer content creation industry has lowered the bar for resolution. So 5 years ago, we were all panicking that 20 megapixels might not be enough.
Yeah.
Today, it probably is. Even though megapixel fans will get uneasy. I get uneasy myself. You just want more megapixels, don't you? But the fact of the matter is, it's probably enough.
Yeah.
Depending on the market you're going for.
Yeah, I'm perfectly happy with 20, and I don't need more than 20. And despite, you know, obviously, like I upgraded or got more higher megapixel cameras simply because my job needed them, and not from a personal perspective. And that's why I still use the OM1 a lot for my own stuff. And but yeah, I think that, you know, once again, you know, I think high megapixel cameras are good to have, but I certainly don't think it's necessary. And I think that it really clogs up the system unless you have a lot of time to process them, unless you have a lot of storage and money to throw into storage systems, because they are huge files. And especially these days, we are pretty much trigger happy as a digital photographer. We tend to shoot more than we used to. That you might end up with terabytes and terabytes of data out there, and which you need to store somewhere. And let alone when you're traveling, you have to have lots of memory cards and lots of like portable storage just to back them up.
It can also make you dissatisfied with your lenses. I've noticed this with the Fujifilm X system, that the 40 megapixel X-trans sensor is a wonderful sensor, but the limitations of the lenses are thrown in, no pun intended, thrown into sharp relief. So you suddenly realise that all the lenses you thought were probably all right on 26 megapixels, when you see them on 40, you think, oh, I don't like this anymore. So that's another aspect to consider, in that when you start investing in resolution, you start investing kind of mentally as well, and you want to get your money's worth, and that can make you much more picky about the overall image quality. It's much harder to get the best from a high resolution sensor in terms of your own technique and skill than it is from a lower resolution sensor. So you might think higher resolution will always be better. Not always, because it's harder to achieve that. And you tend to be a bit more critical of any loss in image quality when you don't achieve it. Well, I do.
Yeah. David Black here. I would love to have a Pen F Pro, a step above OM5. I would love to see 1.4 lens in the lineup, and also would love to see some f2 zoom like we discussed before.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. More 1.4 primes, I think it would be quite nice and to have. Perhaps, maybe, we kind of discussed a little bit before this chat between Rod and and I think Nikon's 3514 is an interesting proposition. I mean, I think that Olympus could potentially release some non-pro lenses, but with large aperture, but at a lower price point, lesser built, but just give users an access to something that potentially be an interesting entry ticket to the pro line.
F1. That's the way to go. That's the way to go. If you want to be different.
Yeah.
Some F1 zooms, not zooms, F1 primes. F1.2, that's fine. F1, better.
Yeah. And
it's only micro four thirds. It's only a little sensor. Can't be that hard.
No. I'm just reading a TL got a comment here. USB-C is the only EU standard. I think we're just echoing earlier about the EM5 or /OM5 connections charging port. Right,
yeah.
And let's see looking here.
The only problem I found with that is that cameras that have USB-C ports generally expect USB PD charging devices. So just getting an old charging bank, sticking a USB-C cable in, that's not going to work. I've had Canon cameras before that won't charge unless it's from a proper PD delivery device. So, it's fine, but you might have to get yourself another couple of power banks to go with it, if that's the route they follow.
Yeah, absolutely. And Linda Mask, speaking of size, have OM System abandoned the M10 line? And then, actually, sorry about double posting. My laptop does not heat. Oh. Okay. Right, let's go back to the original.
Still on sale. So either there's a large inventory still available or they're still making it. I don't know. You can still buy it, UK and US, as far as I can see.
Like we discussed earlier, I don't know exactly currently what they plan in terms of product lines, and certainly we know for sure that OM1 is there to stay, and that's for sure because they already released Mark II, and the OM5 is going to stay. For anything else at the moment, we don't know until it comes, because we don't know about Pen, we don't know about the EM10 series, whatever they're going to come afterward. So it'll be interesting to see, that's for sure. Right, and Luke Taylor, I would love to see some small premium 1.4 between 1.8s and very expensive 1.2s. More lenses like the 21-4, consistent metal build quality with focus clutch. Don't we all? Don't we all? I think we all would like to see some of those as well. Okay, let's gonna quickly whisk through this, and we can conclude today's chat. Alan basically saying that OM5 needs an update. No more plastic, like a mini OM1. Okay, well, yeah, that would be nice, but I never really have any problem with plastic bodies, to be quite honest. I know we all like metal bodies and things like that. I think it's maybe perhaps a little bit overhyped. Plastic can be quite good in certain situations. For instance, heat, and I think it's quite good in keeping it out. And I'm not so sure about ventilating it, but keeping it out for sure is actually pretty okay. So long you have a silver body that reflects it, that may not be so bad.
Many things are practical that we don't necessarily like.
Yeah,
that's life.
Yeah. Oh, John Young actually just to kind of echo what we just said about the new 3514, $599 USD. You guys are getting it cheap, In the UK, we're having, is this £650? I think we have it. So we're actually selling more than you guys.
In the States, excuse my ignorance, but do you have to pay taxes at checkout, or are the prices you see other?
Because depending on states, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So the prices we see at B&H may not be the price you finally pay at the checkout. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we just wait for his comment. I'm pretty sure that you're correct. I think that you have to add text to it.
Right.
And
Okay.
different states have different tax numbers, I think.
Okay.
So it could be
Okay.
slightly different at every.
I'd be interested to know because I'd produce a lot of content that's both for the UK and the US. So I'd like to know so I don't just say stupid stuff for a US audience.
Yeah. And let's see. Any other comments right here? Okay. John Fallows. Hello, guys from Manchester, UK. If you're heading to isolated places, you need two camera bodies, the OM1 II and the G9 II, which is an ideal setup with the right lenses naturally. That's a very difficult question to answer because both of them are equally capable, and it really depends on what you are going to do with your lens, with your cameras, and what type of thing you're going to be photographing. If you are
I I wonder
purely
if I
looking at
wonder if
wildlife, yeah, sorry, go on now, Rod.
I wonder if John is simply making the point that it doesn't hurt to have a backup. So, for example, if you're going to Antarctica, you're
Yep,
probably going to take two cameras, aren't you, just in case?
yep. I'm just trying
Oh,
to
so
think of.
so I'm just looking at these comments. So Chuck and Mark are both saying, so if I get this straight in my head, then if you go to something like B&H, you see a thing at a certain price, you click on the item at the checkout, you'll be then charged an additional tax depending on your state. I just want to make sure I've got that right, so that in future, when I say something is cheaper in the US than the UK, I should remember that what you see on the B&H site or Other Armour or whatever is not necessarily the final price.
No, that's good to
Right.
know.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Yep. Okay, so just go back to John's thing, and I don't think there's an ideal system. The ideal system would be what you think is best for your type of photography that you want to capture. Like I did my comparison between the OM Mark II and the G9 Mark II, and I think if you're just really talking about general photography, both of them are capable. But if you are going to utilize burst high-speed shooting, and I think the OM Mark II actually trumps the G9 Mark II simply because the buffer clearing issues that G9 Mark II still suffers. And let's say when the buffer is full, you can't continue to shoot the G9 Mark II until the buffer is clear. So you have to stop momentarily until the system clears itself. While the OM1 Mark II, you can continue at much slower speed while the buffer is still being cleared, but at least you can still continue to shoot. So it really depending on your scenarios, what sort of thing you need, and perhaps if you really need high resolution, then we already discussed this, 24 versus 20. Just depending on which way you need really.
I think, well, perhaps another angle on this is that maybe it depends on the lenses you find most useful. My feeling is that the Panasonic lenses work best on Panasonic bodies, and OM lenses work best on OM bodies. So if you've got a particular Panasonic lens that's an absolute favorite, like I think there's a 100-400, which
Yeah.
seems pretty decent, there's an argument for having a Lumix body to use it on. Or if you've got if you like particularly like the 300 f4 from OM System, there's an argument for putting that on an OM body, and there's
Yeah.
kind of an argument in that respect for
Yeah.
having two cameras to match your favorite lenses if they happen to be from two makers.
Yeah.
That was a complicated answer, wasn't it?
It was a very complicated answer.
Yeah, sorry.
And Linda's here, and people who want small cams could switch to Panasonic, but they haven't updated the GX series for ages. And fabulous camera, but still atrocious EVF.
I'm not a big fan of the smaller Lumix G lenses. I've used a few, and I don't think they're that great, if I'm honest. But people have different expectations. Other people may not feel the same way.
Yeah, yeah. And talking about EVF, and just to emphasize that if you're purely looking at EVF quality, and I think the OM1/OM Mark II still has the best Micro Four Third EVF at present.
The EM13 wasn't so good. I don't think.
No,
But
and
the OM1, I think, is a good step up. Yeah.
yeah, it's way better than anything that I have at the moment, including the G9 Mark II and the forthcoming GX7, because GX7 EVF is exactly the same as GX6 because it has better magnification, but it's still the same resolution. So if you are doing a lot of menu focusing, if you want to check focus, for instance, and I think the OM1/OM1 Mark II EVF would definitely a much better choice if you need to use that sort of confirmations when it comes to focusing. So let's move on to the next.
Jimmy, not to be a party pooper, but it's 5:20.
Oh my goodness, time has flied.
Yeah,
okay, right.
yeah.
Last one here, and then we're gonna wrap up. Right. I'm just trying to find one last comment here, then we can end it today. John Allen, let's talk about where the ceiling. That's it, and we're gonna finish it. Are new camera boxes sealed in plastic anymore? Are you talking about where the ceiling, like the sealed around? I'm not entirely sure what.
No, I think all the new cameras I get, you get a possibly a circular plastic tab over the opening, so that if that's been tampered with, it'll be immediately obvious.
Oh,
but I don't think you get boxes sealed in plastic anymore.
No, actually,
if that's what you mean.
Yeah, I think I kind of guess what you're saying now. Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't seen plastic sealed boxes for a while now.
No.
You do see it from Chinese lenses; they're still sealed in plastic.
Yeah.
But nothing else. But okay, right. So that's the end of today's OM chat, and thank you for all to coming along and join us for our conversations here and participate with our discussion. It's been great, and I see lots and lots of comments here, and I think that is very enthusiastic about today's topic. We hope to repeat that next time when we talk about Panasonic. So any Panasonic users, please do come back. I want to hear from your side and your experience. And also your wishes of what Panasonic should do or shouldn't do in the past, and we'd like to hear from you. That would be quite interesting. And also, like I said, and I'm a new Lumix user by compared to OM or any other brand that I have used before. So I'm kind of like a newbie still. So I would like to hear from your experience on Lumix cameras. And obviously, Rod has used some and tested them before, so it'll be quite good to have this discussion as well, to see whether what we should be looking forward to in the future from Panasonic. And that will be quite interesting to see. So anyway, thanks a lot for joining, and thank you, Rod, for joining us once again. And so hopefully we can do that next week, depending on whether Rod can get a secure Wi-Fi connection for next week's chat.
Wi-Fi.
Then we can continue next week's session. Otherwise, we'll notify you if it doesn't happen via the community page here, so you know that it's not happening next week. But if you do, it will be the usual schedule, 3 p.m. London time. So until next time. So I guess I will say goodbye. So everybody, thank you very much for joining, and I will see you all very, very soon. Bye for now. Cheers.